An overheard whisper could detonate your entire world. Mark, wrench in hand, became an accidental witness to a conversation that ripped through his life like a sonic boom. His wife, cheating. For how long? Would revenge bring solace, or could he swallow the bitter pill of betrayal and somehow rebuild? We were about to find out. "Mark, honey, anything you need from the kitchen?" Emily's voice, laced with a cheerfulness so forced it was almost aggressive, sliced through the garage air. That brittle, overly bright tone had become their new normal. A thin, fragile mask over the cracks in their foundation. I kept my eyes fixed on the Harley engine in front of me, anything to avoid the sound of her voice, which grated on my nerves more with each passing day. "Nope, nothing," I answered, my voice flat, trying to maintain a semblance of calm. The garage had become my sanctuary, a place to drown out the escalating tension at home. The familiar scent of oil and grease was strangely comforting, grounding me. Working with my hands gave me a flicker of control, something desperately lacking in my marriage lately. For months, Emily and I had been drifting, growing further apart with each passing day. I'd chalked it up to the wear and tear of 35 years, the inevitable ebb and flow of long-term commitment. People change, right? You can't expect the spark to burn at the same intensity forever. Our daughter, Chloe, was home for the weekend, a rare treat given her demanding career. Her presence usually brightened the house, but even Chloe's infectious energy couldn't quite cut through the thick tension hanging between Emily and me. I wiped the grease from my fingers and grabbed a water bottle, taking a long, slow swig. The garage door was slightly ajar, letting in a gentle breeze. From where I stood, I could hear the faint clatter of dishes from the kitchen, Emily and Chloe's voices murmuring in the background, the easy rhythm of mother-daughter chatter. I leaned against the bike, letting their voices wash over me, a temporary reprieve from the heavy silence that usually filled our home. "Mom, want me to chop these peppers?" Chloe asked. "Please, sweetie, and grab the olive oil," Emily replied, her tone perfectly normal, as if nothing was amiss between us. As I tightened a bolt on the engine, my mind wandered. Had I been blind? Emily had become distant, yes, but I'd convinced myself we'd weather the storm, like we always had. But there was a persistent unease, a nagging feeling I'd been pushing down for too long. Maybe I was just getting old, losing touch. Chloe's laughter floated through the garage, bright and carefree, and I managed a small smile. Her being here didn't magically fix the chasm between Emily and me, but it offered a fleeting comfort. I bent over the engine again, trying to lose myself in the intricate mechanics, when Emily's voice shifted. It dropped, becoming quieter, more intimate, almost secretive. "Chloe, honey, I need to tell you something." My hand froze midair, the wrench hovering over the engine. I held my breath, listening intently. "I didn't plan to say anything now." Emily's voice was barely above a whisper, but perfectly clear. "But there's someone else." A cold dread coiled in my stomach. "He's nothing like your father. He's everything I've been missing." Her words were like shards of ice, piercing the air, freezing me in place. My world tilted on the edge of a truth I wasn't ready to face. A sharp, sickening jolt shot through me, paralyzing me. My body refused to move, my breath caught in my throat as her words began to sink in. A real man. Who was she talking about? Not like Dad. Chloe's voice was light, almost dismissive, as if they were discussing the weather. Emily chuckled, a low, bitter sound. "Your father, let's just say, He's in a different league. This man, he's powerful, confident, and oh my God, Chloe, what he can do in bed." Her voice dripped with an unsettling, almost giddy excitement. "He's a real alpha male, not like your mild-mannered father." A wave of heat surged through me, rage building like a pressure cooker. But I stayed rooted to the spot, hoping, praying this was some grotesque joke. Emily couldn't be serious, could she? Then she laughed again, a sound brimming with smug satisfaction. "And the best part? He can go all night, Chloe, without even breaking a sweat." She sounded proud, bragging about some twisted accomplishment. "He gives me everything your father never could." The wrench in my hand bit into my palm as I clenched my fist tighter, the cold metal digging into my skin. "All night? Seriously?" Chloe asked, no surprise in her voice, just a mild, almost bored curiosity. "That sounds intense." "It's true," Emily confirmed, her voice thick with pride. "And I'm leaving your father." The floor seemed to drop out from under me. "He doesn't know it yet, but I'm taking the house, the money, everything." A beat of silence, then the clinking of dishes stopped. "Wow, Mom," Chloe said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Sounds wonderful." "Oh, trust me, honey," Emily laughed, as if they were planning a vacation, not the demolition of my life. "When we're done, your father won't know what hit him." I couldn't listen anymore. My fists clenched so tight my nails drew blood. My vision blurred with a red haze of fury. Without thinking, I stormed from the garage, through the connecting door, slamming it behind me with a deafening crash that echoed through the house. The kitchen, where my wife and daughter had been casually plotting my destruction, was just steps away. I crossed the distance in seconds. As soon as I burst into the room, the laughter died, snuffed out like a candle flame. They both froze. Emily, my wife of 35 years, stood rigid, a knife clutched in her hand, her face a mask of shock. Chloe, leaning against the counter, her relaxed posture instantly replaced with stunned silence. Their faces mirrored my own disbelief. They hadn't expected to be caught. The raw, ugly truth hung exposed in the air. "Dad," Chloe stammered, her voice trembling, trying to regain some semblance of composure. It's not what you think." "Oh, really?" I interrupted, my voice dangerously low, simmering with rage. "Then enlighten me, Chloe. What exactly am I wrong about? That your mother is having an affair? Or that she's planning to take everything I've built?" Chloe's lips moved, but no sound came out. She looked utterly lost. Emily hesitantly stepped forward, like approaching a cornered animal. "Let's just sit down and talk about this, Mark." Emily's voice was strained, tight with forced composure. "You've got it all wrong. You don't understand what's really going on." "Don't you dare!" I growled, pointing a finger at her, my voice rising. "Don't even try to spin this. I heard every word." The silence that followed was suffocating, thick with betrayal. Emily slowly placed the knife on the counter, her hand visibly shaking. "I was going to tell you," she whispered, her voice fragile, barely audible. "I just didn't know how." "Didn't know how?" I repeated, disbelief dripping from every syllable. "So instead of talking to me, your husband, you confided in our daughter. You schemed behind my back, plotted to destroy everything we've built? That was your brilliant plan?" Emily couldn't meet my gaze, her eyes fixed on the floor. Chloe stood beside her, arms crossed, trying to distance herself from the unfolding catastrophe as if she were an innocent bystander, not an accomplice. Finally, Chloe spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Mom didn't mean for it to be like this, Dad. She's been unhappy for a long time." A bitter laugh escaped my lips, hollow and sharp. Unhappy? And her solution is to cheat? To lie? To plan to strip me bare and leave me with nothing? And you condone this, Chloe? Chloe bit her lip, her gaze shifting away from mine, avoiding contact. "It's not that simple, Dad. You're never around. You're always working or hiding in the garage. Mom needed something." A storm of anger erupted inside me, constricting my chest. "So, because I work? Because I dedicate my life to providing for this family, that somehow justifies her betrayal? That makes what she's done acceptable?" "Mark, it's not like that," Emily pleaded, taking a step closer. "I never wanted to hurt you." "Stop lying!" I roared, slamming my fist on the kitchen table, the sound echoing through the tense room, a sharp crack that seemed to physically jolt both of them. "You were ready to take everything from me, down to the last goddamn penny, and you didn't even consider how it would destroy me." My voice was raw, laced with pure, agonizing pain. Emily's face twisted in anguish. "I wasn't planning to take everything," she muttered weakly. I thought I'd leave you something." I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter, hollow sound that filled the space between us. "Leave me something?" I scoffed. "After 35 years, you think all I deserve is a scrap? A tiny, insignificant remnant of what we built together?" My words hung in the air, dripping with contempt. "And you think I should be grateful for that?" Emily's eyes welled with tears, but it didn't move me. Any compassion I might have once felt for her had been extinguished, burned to ashes by the truth. There was no going back. She reached out to me, a desperate, pleading gesture, trying to bridge the widening chasm between us. But I recoiled, refusing her touch, refusing to let her near. Every word I spoke, every breath I took, only deepened the divide. "Mark, please." Emily's voice trembled with desperation. "We can still work something out. I don't want it to end like this." "Work something out?" I repeated in disbelief, my tone sharp, biting. "It's too late, Emily. That ship sailed the moment you made your choice." I turned away from her, my gaze landing on Chloe. "And you, Chloe, you're just going to stand there and watch this happen? Are you really going to let her do this to me? After everything I've done for you?" Chloe's eyes dropped to the floor, guilt etched across her face. "I didn't think it would go this far," she began, her voice barely audible, but I cut her off before she could finish. "But you didn't stop it, did you?" My voice was harsh, unforgiving. "You stood by and let it happen." The silence that followed was suffocating, as if the air had thickened, heavy with unspoken accusations, unshed tears, and shattered trust. Emily's tears now flowed freely, but I felt nothing, no flicker of pity, no hint of remorse. She had made her choice, and now she would face the consequences. "You want the house? The money?" My voice was cold, emotionless. "Take it. Take everything. But know this, Emily. You lost far more today than you can possibly imagine. You lost me." Emily's sobs grew louder, but I had no patience left for her theatrics. I turned away, unwilling to hear another word. Chloe just stood there, pale and motionless, as if the blood had drained from her face, leaving only shock in its wake. I looked back at both of them, my voice quiet but laced with a chilling menace. "You think this is the end? You think you've won?" I leaned in closer, my words dripping with ice. "You have no idea what I'm capable of." It was clear now. There was no reaching them. Their faces told the story. The remorse they felt wasn't for what they'd done, it was only for getting caught. Emily's contemptuous nickname, alpha male, echoed in my mind, stinging like a slap. Every late night, every sacrifice, every plan for the future. It was all in vain. The home we built, the life we shared, now felt like a cruel, twisted joke. I had become her target. Standing there in the sterile silence of the kitchen, it felt like I couldn't breathe. Chloe stood frozen, ashen-faced, like all the blood had drained from her. Emily, on the other hand, swung wildly between panic and defiance, her face a storm of raw emotions. They actually believed it would blow over, that I'd eventually calm down, forgive, forget. How utterly, tragically wrong they were. "You want the house?" I asked again, my voice eerily calm, catching them completely off guard. "And the money?" Beneath the surface, I was a volcano about to erupt, a raging inferno of anger threatening to consume everything in its path. "You'll get nothing." Emily's face twisted in confusion, her brow furrowing as she struggled to comprehend my words. "Mark, we need to talk about this," she said, her voice suddenly softening, as if a sudden dose of gentleness could somehow mend what was irrevocably broken. "You're being unreasonable." My eyes locked with hers, cold and unyielding, freezing her mid-sentence. "No," I replied, my voice like shards of ice. "I'm far more reasonable than you deserve." With that, I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her desperate, pleading words hanging in the air. I heard a sharp gasp behind me as Emily finally grasped the full gravity of the situation. Chloe remained silent, unsure, paralyzed, her presence barely noticeable. I headed for my office, my hand already reaching for the drawer. It opened smoothly, revealing a folder containing all our financial documents, papers I had meticulously organized over the years. Emily had always left the finances to me, a detail she would soon come to bitterly regret. My fingers danced across the keyboard, accessing our joint accounts, years of savings, plans for what I had foolishly believed was our shared future. With a few keystrokes, it was gone. Every penny transferred in seconds to a separate account I had quietly set up years ago, a contingency fund I never imagined I'd actually need. "Mark, what are you doing?" Emily's voice, sharp with panic, sliced through the silence, but I ignored her. My phone vibrated, slicing through the tension. The first notification confirmed the transfer completion. The second followed. Emily's personal account also emptied. She lunged towards me, her eyes wide with raw panic, trying to peer at the screen. Her breathing became erratic, shallow gasps. Finally, the realization dawned. "No, Mark! Stop!" she shrieked, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch, laced with pure terror. I stood up, turning to face her. "You thought you could take everything from me," I said, my voice dangerously soft. "The house, the money." "Mark, please," she begged, reaching out, as if her touch could somehow undo the devastation she had wrought. "We can fix this. I made a mistake, but we can fix it." I slowly shook my head, a small, deliberate movement. I walked past her without even a glance. "There's nothing left to fix." I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, the sanctuary where I had spent countless nights beside the woman who had been secretly plotting my downfall, my destruction. With a sharp jerk, I flung open the closet doors. My eyes scanned the rows of designer clothes, each item a silent testament to the lavish lifestyle I had provided for her all these years. Bags, shoes, every detail a symbol of the luxury she had come to expect, to demand. Without hesitation, I grabbed handfuls of clothing, expensive silks, cashmere sweaters, designer dresses, and threw them down the stairs as if they were worthless trash. It wasn't just about the material things, it was about what they represented. The betrayal, the lies, the years of deception. Emily stood behind me, her voice rising with desperation as she watched everything she valued, everything she coveted, crumble before her eyes. "Mark, stop it," she pleaded. "We can still talk this through. Fix everything." She continued to plead, but there was no longer any point in reasoning with her. There was no need to shout, to argue. My cold, calculated actions spoke louder than any words. Then I reached for her jewelry box, a heavy, ornate thing, a gift from me years ago. I turned it over, the sound of falling diamonds and gold echoing through the house, a discordant symphony of shattered dreams, adding to the growing pile of expensive debris at the bottom of the stairs. I moved methodically, heading towards the backyard. The fire pit, once a place for quiet evenings, for cozy gatherings, now served a different, darker purpose. I doused the growing pile of clothes and jewelry with gasoline, the sharp, acrid smell filling the air. Emily followed me, her face pale, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. "No, no, please, Mark," she cried, tears streaming down her face as I stood there, a lit match trembling in my hand. I looked at her one last time. This was the woman I had loved for over 35 years, the same woman who had betrayed me in a way I could never forgive, never forget. Without saying a word, I dropped the match onto the pile. The flames erupted instantly, consuming the clothes, the jewelry, everything they symbolized, with a fury that mirrored the inferno raging inside me. Emily collapsed to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably as she watched her treasures turn to ashes, smoke billowing into the sky. "Mark, I'm begging you," she murmured, her voice trembling with desperation, but her cries only strengthened my resolve. "You wanted it all, Emily," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "Now, you have nothing." I turned away from her, leaving her sobbing in the ashes, without looking back. Inside, in the living room, Chloe sat motionless on the couch, her face ashen, her eyes wide open, finally beginning to grasp the full, devastating consequences of her choices. Unlike her mother, she wasn't crying. No, she was in shock, paralyzed by the unfolding reality. "Dad," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't want this. I didn't realize." I stopped in front of her, my expression cold, unyielding. "You knew what was happening, Chloe. You went along with it." Chloe's mouth opened, but no words came out. She saw it in my eyes. There was no forgiveness, no mercy left. "Get out of my house," I said calmly, leaving no room for argument. "Both of you." Chloe's voice quivered, fear beginning to take hold. Where are we supposed to go?" she asked, finally realizing the full gravity of the situation. "I don't care," I cut in, turning sharply and leaving without looking back. "You're not staying here." Emily staggered in, her face smeared with tears, clutching at her sides as if trying to hold herself together. "Mark, please, we have nowhere to go. We can fix everything, I swear we can fix it." I shook my head slowly, my movements deliberate, measured. "You made your choice," I replied, my voice devoid of any warmth, any trace of emotion. Without giving them a single glance, I walked away, knowing it was the last time I would ever see them. Now they had nothing. No money, no home, and certainly no future with me. They thought they had won, that they could walk away unscathed. But they had no idea what I was capable of when pushed to the limit. This was my reckoning. Morning light streamed through the blinds, casting long shadows across the silent apartment. I sat at the kitchen table, replaying the events of the past few days, over and over in my mind. The apartment was eerily quiet, the weight of yesterday's chaos hanging in the air like a heavy fog. But there was a strange sense of peace beneath the unsettling silence. Emily and Chloe had spent the night in some cheap motel after being thrown out, leaving me alone in the house for the first time in decades. I rose from the table and walked to the garage. Emily's Lexus was still parked in the driveway, gleaming, a birthday gift from me, from a lifetime ago. Without hesitation, I grabbed my phone and called the dealership. "I have a car I want to sell," I said as soon as someone answered. "Bring it by this afternoon," came the quick reply. "Cash." By noon, a dealership rep was at my door. I handed over the keys in exchange for a thick envelope of cash. He didn't ask questions, didn't pry for details, just business. I stood by the door, watching as the Lexus disappeared down the street. The expected satisfaction didn't materialize. Instead, only a hollow, numb feeling remained. A whisper of victory, perhaps, but a hollow one. It was a necessary step. I returned to the apartment, mentally preparing for the next task, the bank accounts. Emily had always trusted me to manage the finances, never bothering to keep tabs. She would soon learn the steep price of that trust. Sitting at my desk, I logged into the banking app. With a few quick taps on the screen, I transferred almost all the money into an account solely in my name. I left them just enough to survive for a couple of weeks, enough time for them to figure out their next move. After that, they were on their own. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about making a statement. They no longer held any power over me. They could cry, they could beg, but I was no longer listening. I was no longer a pawn in their twisted game. That evening, they returned. Desperation was etched on their faces. I heard a hesitant knock on the door. I opened it, but didn't let them cross the threshold. "Mark." Emily's voice was barely a whisper, her eyes swollen and red from tears. "We need to talk." "We talked yesterday," I replied, my voice cold, detached. "What more is there to say?" Chloe, her voice trembling, pleaded. "We have nowhere else to go." I stood, arms crossed, leaning against the doorframe, my gaze as cold and unforgiving as it had been the day before. "You made your choice," I replied sharply, devoid of any warmth. "Now you will face its consequences." "Mark, please." Emily's voice cracked, tears welling up again. "We'll end up on the street." "Not my problem," I responded emotionlessly. "You had everything and you squandered it. Now, nothing is left." Chloe looked at me, disbelief clouding her face. "But I'm your daughter," she whispered, her voice filled with despair. I met her gaze, feeling a bitter anger flare up inside me. "You made your choice too, Chloe," I replied evenly. "You sided with your mother. You supported her. You betrayed me, just the same." The silence that followed those words was almost unbearable, thick with unspoken pain, raw regret. Emily wiped the tears from her face, her voice barely a whisper. "We have nowhere to go. We have no money." They looked at me, pleading, hoping that I would soften, that guilt would make me change my mind. But I couldn't. Not after everything. I shook my head slowly, firmly. "You'll figure something out. You always did." Without another word, I turned away and shut the door in their faces, with a finality that echoed through the silent apartment. Muffled sobs from Emily drifted through the door, but I didn't falter, didn't hesitate. I was done. I was leaving. The sound of her crying grew fainter as I walked away. It was the price of their betrayal. Days turned into weeks. As I had expected, Emily turned to her lover. She and Chloe gathered their remaining possessions and moved in with him, desperately clinging to the illusion of a new life. But as his wealth dwindled, so did his affection for them. I wasn't surprised when, a week later, Emily called me, her voice a broken sob, filled with despair. She told me how he had thrown them out onto the streets, leaving them with nothing, no home, no means to survive. I didn't answer her calls. Her voicemail messages became increasingly desperate with each passing day, but I deleted them, unheard. My decision was final. There was no turning back. Meanwhile, I focused on piecing my shattered life back together. I sold the apartment, moved far away from the toxic remnants of betrayal that still clung to the air. I severed all ties with Emily and Chloe. They had made their choices, and now they had to live with the consequences. Yet in the quiet solitude of the night, those long, dark nights, sorrow and anger would creep back in. I sat alone in my new, unfamiliar apartment, the silence pressing down and memories, unwanted, unbidden, would surface. The betrayal replayed in my mind, over and over, like an endless loop of pain. Emily's words to Chloe about her lover, the casual cruelty, the indifference to the devastation she was causing, still stung, still echoed in my head. But I resolved to stop dwelling on it. Their actions could no longer control my emotions. Over time, I heard whispers, rumors of the hardships Emily and Chloe faced. They sought help, but without money, without resources, they were left to fend for themselves. Chloe distanced herself from her mother's lover, realizing, too late, that he had never truly cared for her. They drifted from one unstable situation to another, barely surviving. It wasn't the future they had envisioned, but it was the reality they had created, the bed they had made, and now had to lie in. I felt no satisfaction in their suffering. Revenge was never my goal. For me, it was about reclaiming control of my own life, refusing to be a victim of their deceit. They lived with the consequences of their choices, and I had finally found my freedom. For the first time in a long time, that was enough. The months that followed were filled with an unexpected peace. My new life became quieter, simpler. Though the scars of betrayal remained, faint, faded, I began to find solace in solitude. The past gradually receded, becoming a distant memory, a chapter closed forever. I had no desire to revisit it, not for Emily, not for Chloe. One evening, after a long, draining day, I came home, soaked to the bone from the unexpected downpour. On the kitchen counter lay a small stack of mail, nothing unusual. As I sorted through the bills and junk mail, my hand froze on a plain white envelope. No return address. Only my name, written in a trembling handwriting that I recognized instantly. Chloe. I stared at the envelope, gripping it tightly. Part of me wanted to tear it up, throw it away, where it belonged, but something held me back. Slowly, I sat at the table and opened it. The sound of rain tapping against the window seemed to echo the storm I had so diligently tried to outrun, to leave behind. "Dad," the letter began. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, and I wouldn't blame you if you threw this away without reading it. But please, if you can, just read this. I'm trying to make things right. I'm working, living with friends, doing everything I can to get back on my feet. I made terrible mistakes, Dad. I never wanted to hurt you. I was wrong. So wrong. And now I understand. Mom and I barely talk. She's living with some distant relative. I don't know where her path will lead, but I have to take responsibility for my actions. I'm not expecting your forgiveness, Dad, but I was hoping maybe you'd give me a chance to meet with you, just once, so I can apologize in person. I'm so sorry, Dad. Love, Chloe." I read the letter again, my thoughts in turmoil. Chloe trying to apologize? After everything? It seemed surreal. Part of me wanted to believe her, to grasp at the possibility of reconciliation. But another part, still raw from the pain of betrayal, wanted to slam the door shut on any chance of forgiveness. I placed the letter back on the table, unsure what to do next. The next day, it still lay there, staring at me, a silent question waiting for an answer. I tried to go about my daily life, but her words lingered, echoing in my thoughts. I couldn't stop wondering if she was sincere. Was this a genuine attempt to make amends, or just another act of manipulation? After days of wrestling with my conflicting emotions, I made a decision. I would meet her. Not because I was ready to forgive, not because I was ready to forget, but because I needed to hear it, everything, directly from her. I needed to see her face, look into her eyes, and try to discern if she had truly changed, or if this was just another performance. I called the number she had included in her letter, and we arranged to meet. A quiet cafe, neutral ground. On the day of the meeting, I walked in, bracing myself for the worst. I scanned the room until I saw her, sitting alone in a corner booth. She looked different, thinner, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. There was a weariness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. As I approached, she stood up nervously, fiddling with her fingers. "Dad," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the cafe's gentle hum. I nodded slightly, but remained silent. I sat down across from her, placing my hands on the table. She hesitated a moment before sitting down, avoiding eye contact, until she finally met my gaze. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly, her voice trembling. I didn't respond immediately, letting the silence hang between us, heavy and charged. Finally, I spoke, breaking the strained quiet. "You wanted to apologize." She took a deep breath before replying. "Yes, I know that no words can fix what I've done. I was selfish. I caused you pain, Dad, pain that I can never fully understand." Her words hung in the air between us. At the time, I didn't understand, but now, every single day, I regret my actions. I regret letting Mom manipulate me. I regret causing you so much pain. I stared at her, trying to detect any hint of deception, any flicker of insincerity in her face. "It's not just that you let her manipulate you, Chloe," I said, my voice low, steady. "You were complicit. You encouraged it. You laughed at it." My words hit her hard. She flinched, tears welling up in her eyes. "I know," she whispered, her voice trembling with remorse. "I was foolish. I thought I was doing what was right for myself, but I was too. Absorbed in my own world to see the damage I was causing. And because of that," She paused, wiping her tears. I lost everything. You, Mom, everything. I sighed heavily, feeling a familiar wave of anger bubbling up inside me, but it was different now, less intense, tinged with a weariness. What do you expect from me, Chloe? I asked, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. She shook her head quickly, her face pale, devastated. I don't want anything, she answered softly. I needed to apologize. I had to say it in person. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't at least try. Her words lingered in the air as I sat in silence, absorbing them. The pain was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but beneath the anger, something else was stirring. A faint flicker of something. For a fleeting moment I saw the little girl I had once raised, not the woman who had shattered my world. I sighed deeply, leaning back in my chair. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you, Chloe, I said, my voice quiet, heavy. What you and your mother did, it broke something inside me. Something I'm still trying to piece back together. Chloe nodded slowly, her face crumpling as she struggled to hold back her tears. I understand, she whispered, her voice quivering. I'm so sorry, Dad. I'll always be sorry. I stood up, pushing my chair back from the table. Take care of yourself, Chloe. And with those words, I left the cafe, leaving her behind. Whether I had made the right decision or not, only time would tell, but right now I wasn't ready to let her back into my life. Some wounds, I realized, take a lifetime to heal. Fortunately, fate, in its unpredictable way, had other plans for me. I met Sarah, a woman who had also known the sting of betrayal, and we found solace in each other's company. Months passed, and our relationship deepened, grew stronger, a balm to the old wounds. Soon, Sarah moved in with me. We adopted a puppy, a goofy golden retriever named Max, and we cherished every ordinary day together. Chloe no longer appeared, nor did Emily. The silence from their corner of the world was absolute. But on a late autumn evening, as the leaves fell and the air turned crisp, I heard a soft knock at the door. It was Chloe. Her eyes were red-rimmed, swollen from crying, and what she said then, it still echoes in my mind. Mom passed away. She told me Emily had been battling cancer for a year, a secret she had kept hidden from everyone, even Chloe. In the aftermath of Emily's death, Chloe started visiting my home more often. I tried to offer comfort, a father's solace to a grieving daughter, but forgiveness was still a long and arduous journey. Emily was gone. Fate, it seemed, had played a cruel, ironic hand. She had chased a fleeting illusion of happiness, a shallow pursuit of luxury and excitement, and in the end, she had lost everything, including her life. She had betrayed me, terribly, unforgivably, and now she was simply gone. And now, for a second story, a different kind of betrayal, a different kind of reckoning. Amelia Brown pulled into her driveway, pressed the button for the garage door, and steered her car inside. Instantly something felt wrong. Her husband, David's, truck was missing from its usual spot. Maybe he'd taken the kids out for a late dinner, she thought, though it felt a little off, considering the late hour. But it was Friday night, no school tomorrow. Maybe David decided to give the kids a rare treat, a late-night adventure. The thought made her smile. It was actually kind of nice to imagine David taking charge for once. She often felt like she was managing not just 2 children, but 3, including him. Stepping out of the car, she walked into the house. Silence. The home, usually buzzing with life, was eerily quiet. No TV blaring, no video games echoing, just an unsettling, oppressive stillness. Wandering through the dimly lit rooms, her thoughts drifted back to the evening's rendezvous with Jake. A brief flicker of guilt washed over her, but it vanished as quickly as it came. Standing in the silence, she wondered, just for a moment, what her life would be like if David ever actually left. The thought made her pause. Then she quietly laughed. No, she reassured herself. If David had ever planned to leave, he would have done it by now. She'd been seeing Jake for over a year, and David hadn't questioned a single one of her increasingly elaborate excuses. At first, her meetings with Jake were sporadic, just once a week, a stolen lunch hour, a quick drink after work. But now, their affair had escalated to 5 times a week, sometimes even Saturdays, and David remained blissfully or willfully oblivious. Amelia suspected David had some inkling of what was going on, a vague, unsettling suspicion, but he never brought it up, never confronted her, not even when she lied about going to a conference for the weekend. The truth? She'd been with Jake at one of his work events as his +1, and now they were planning a week-long cruise together, a Caribbean escape. All they needed was another believable excuse to keep David in the dark. Entering the bedroom, she quickly undressed and headed for the shower. She wanted to wash away any trace of Jake, just in case David happened to be in a amorous mood when he got home. He hadn't shown much interest in her lately, but better safe than sorry, you never knew. After the shower, she slipped into bed, feeling exhaustion finally claiming her. The lingering echoes of her time with Jake slowly faded as sleep pulled her under. The next morning, Amelia woke up expecting to find David asleep beside her, but his side of the bed was empty, untouched. Frowning, she listened for sounds in the house. Silence. Maybe they were outside, she thought, pulling on a robe. She wandered through the house, calling out for them, her voice echoing in the unnerving quiet. No answer. A knot of unease began to tighten in her stomach. She peered out the windows, hoping to spot David and the kids in the backyard, but the yard was deserted, eerily still. Her chest tightened. Panic began to prickle at the edges of her composure. She rushed through every room, shouting David's name, the kids' names, but found no trace of them. Hurrying to the garage, she saw David's truck was still gone. Her heart pounded against her ribs as she sprinted upstairs to the closet. She froze. David's clothes were gone. His toiletries, too, vanished from the bathroom counter. Panic clawed at her throat. She dashed into the kids' rooms. Empty. Their things, their clothes, their toys, all gone. With trembling hands, Amelia grabbed her phone and dialed David's number, desperate for answers, any explanation. But when the automated voicemail informed her that the number was no longer in service, that the number had been disconnected, the ground seemed to dissolve beneath her feet, and her world began to crumble. A wave of raw panic engulfed her. No, this can't be happening, she muttered, her voice a shaky whisper. Frantically, she reached for her phone again, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped it. She dialed David's parents, praying they could shed some light on the unfolding nightmare. The phone rang, and when Margaret, David's mother, answered, Amelia tried to steady her voice. "Hi, Margaret, it's Amelia. Have you heard from David or the kids lately, by any chance?" Margaret's voice carried a note of concern. "No, honey, I haven't heard anything. Why? Is something wrong?" Amelia's voice quivered as she replied, I got home late last night, and they weren't here. At first I thought David had just taken the kids out for dinner, but they never came back. I tried calling him, but his phone, it's disconnected. It says the number has been disconnected. A brief, heavy silence hung between them. Then Margaret spoke again, uncertainty lacing her words. I don't know what to tell you, Amelia. Maybe you should call the police, report them missing. Amelia swallowed hard, nodding numbly, as if Margaret could actually see her through the phone. Yes, I think you're right. Thanks, Margaret. She ended the call, her hands still shaking uncontrollably. She stumbled to the kitchen, desperate for coffee, hoping the familiar ritual would somehow calm the rising tide of panic. But then her eyes landed on something on the counter that made her freeze. Next to the coffee maker lay a plain, white envelope, and on top of it, David's wedding ring. A wave of icy dread washed over her as she reached for the envelope, her fingers trembling. Inside, a neatly folded letter, typed, impersonal, chillingly formal. Amelia sank into a kitchen chair, forgetting about the coffee, and began to read. The note began, simply, devastatingly. Amelia, if you haven't figured it out by now, I've left. The kids are with me. They're safe. You probably don't even remember, but last Friday was our 29th wedding anniversary. Instead of spending it with me, with your family, you chose to be with Jake Miller. I'd like to say I'm surprised, but it's just another important family moment you discarded without a second thought. Last month you missed Ryan's 15th birthday. I tried to make excuses for you, telling him you were busy with work, but we both knew where you were. You weren't working. You were in Miller's bed. The same thing happened on Emily's birthday 5 months ago. You couldn't even be there for her. She was crushed when I told her you had other commitments. Do you even remember when Ryan got injured at football practice a month ago? The school called you, frantic, but you didn't answer. I later found out why. You weren't at some meeting. You were with Miller again, this time in a hotel downtown. I hired a private investigator, Amelia. He confirmed everything. Yes, Amelia, I've known about your affair for a long time, and here's something that will hurt you even more than this letter, I suspect. The kids know, too. They noticed your absences, your lies. They figured it out. I even know about that conference you supposedly attended, and the cruise you're planning with Miller at the end of the year. Well, you won't need to lie to me anymore. You made your choice, Amelia, and it's painfully clear that this affair is more important to you than your family. I had hoped, foolishly perhaps, that one day you'd realize what you were doing and come back to us, to me, to the kids. Maybe, just maybe, we could have salvaged something. But you've been emotionally absent for a long time, Amelia. And now I've made my decision. I'm leaving, and I'm taking the kids with me. Since you couldn't be bothered to put them first, I will. For you. Expect divorce papers at your office. Yes, Amelia, I'm filing for divorce, on grounds of adultery. It's recognized in this state. I'm also suing Jake Miller for alienation of affection. That's legal here, too. This isn't about money, Amelia. It's about justice. The letter slipped from her trembling hands. Her head spun, the room tilting, swirling, as if the entire world had cracked open beneath her, swallowing her whole, leaving her plummeting into a dark, endless void. I taught the children that actions have consequences, the letter continued, the typed words seeming to mock her. Since you've chosen to prioritize your relationship with Miller over our family, Frequently leaving the kids with me 4 nights a week to be with him, I am filing for full custody. Additionally, you may be required to pay child support, given your significantly higher income. I am not asking for spousal support. I won't prevent you from seeing the children, Amelia, but you'll have to make the effort. You'll have to take care of yourself and cover all travel expenses. We are moving to another country, Amelia, to Italy. I've accepted a promotion, a significant career advancement, and will now lead our company's European operations in Rome for the next 10 years. I had hoped we could celebrate this moment together, Amelia, but you continually chose nights with Miller, and we never had the chance to share this occasion. In my desk, in the top drawer, you will find a signed deed transfer. The house is now yours, Amelia, along with half of our joint accounts. I've removed myself from any remaining financial obligations. From now on, it's all on you. Enjoy. But keep this in mind, Amelia. If you choose to contest the divorce, you might find yourself at the center of a rather nasty public scandal. Alongside the deed, you'll find a collection of explicit photographs of you and Miller. These images are just a small portion of the material captured during your clandestine meetings. I wish I could say that the last 20 years were incredible, Amelia, but they weren't. The first 9 were good, I'll give you that. I gave you all my love, Amelia, but apparently it wasn't enough for you. In the last 2 years, you grew distant, cold. Despite my efforts to reconnect, to bridge the gap, you only offered weak excuses for your constant absence. You might have noticed that I stopped trying to be close to you, Amelia, some time ago. The truth is, the very thought that I came second to Jake Miller disgusted me. Maybe you thought I was indifferent to your affair because I didn't interfere. You know me, Amelia. I would never raise a hand to you, never try to control your choices. That's simply not who I am. But you need to understand, Amelia, you hurt me far more than you can possibly imagine, and that's something I'll never fully get over. So please, Amelia, don't give me empty cliches. Don't offer insincere apologies. Throughout all the years of our marriage, the thought of cheating, of betraying you, never once crossed my mind. You and the children were always my priority. But for the past few years, Amelia, you've been absent from our lives. Now we are the ones leaving you. I hope your choice was worth it. Don't try to contact me, Amelia, or the kids. If they want to talk to you, I'll let them make that decision. But be warned, Amelia, they aren't very happy with you right now. If you need to reach me, do so through my lawyer. His contact information is enclosed. Goodbye, Amelia. The letter was signed simply, David. Tears welled up in Amelia's eyes as she carefully folded the letter back into the envelope. She picked up David's lawyer's business card, placed it on the table, promising herself, with a shaky resolve, to call on Monday. Then she grabbed her phone, her fingers fumbling, and dialed Jake's number. He picked up on the second ring. "What did he do?" Jake's voice flared with anger as Amelia, her voice choked with sobs, explained what David had done, what he had revealed in his letter. You said he was okay with all of this," Jake said, his anger tinged with disbelief. She had long suspected David knew, but he'd never said a word, never confronted her, not once. As she had confessed now, she was utterly, devastatingly alone. "What am I going to do now, Jake?" she sobbed, tears streaming down her face, blurring her vision. Do you want me to come over?" he asked, his voice softening, trying, she thought, to sound comforting. "Yes, Jake, please," she pleaded, her voice breaking. Jake hung up and started driving to her house, unaware that a man was parked a few houses down the street in an unmarked car, watching his every move. "Thanks, Mom," David said, finishing his phone call with Amelia's mother-in-law. "Any time, dear," his mother replied, her voice still laced with concern. "Promise you'll call as soon as you get settled in Rome," she insisted. "I will, Mom," he assured her. The children gave their grandmother one last hug before heading to the airport. For them, this was the beginning of something new, an adventure. But for David, it was the definitive end of his 29-year marriage to Amelia. A part of him, a small, stubborn part, still ached for her, for what they had once shared, but another, stronger part felt a profound sense of relief. The last 15 months, the months she had spent entangled with Jake Miller, were finally, irrevocably over. It was time, he knew, to move on. Soon after, divorce papers arrived at Amelia's office. The court messenger was far from discreet, making it abundantly clear in front of her colleagues that she was being sued for infidelity, for neglecting her family responsibilities. Amelia felt her face burn with shame as her co-workers exchanged knowing glances. Jake Miller didn't escape unscathed either, receiving, in short order, notice of a lawsuit for alienation of affection. When Amelia finally contacted David's lawyer, he was blunt, unsympathetic. He told her, in no uncertain terms, to either sign the papers and accept the terms, or hire her own attorney and prepare for a protracted and likely very public legal battle. After consulting with several divorce lawyers, each one delivered the same grim assessment. David's demands were, under the circumstances, more than fair. She had no real choice. She signed the papers, sent them back, defeated. Meanwhile, David settled into his new apartment in Rome. The children, initially hesitant, slowly adapted to their new surroundings, quickly growing to love their new home, their new school, their new life. David received an email from his lawyer, confirming that Amelia had signed the divorce documents. It brought a strange sense of closure, a finality he hadn't anticipated. He wasn't thrilled to hear, through the legal grapevine, that Jake Miller had moved into their former family home, but he knew it was only a matter of time. With no objections from Amelia, the divorce was finalized in record time. The court, unsurprisingly, ordered Amelia to pay a modest amount for child support. Though David certainly didn't need the money, he immediately transferred every penny into a college fund for Ryan and Emily. As for Jake Miller, he settled the alienation of affection lawsuit with David's attorney out of court, without going to trial, likely fearing the public scrutiny. Those funds, too, went directly into the Children's Trust Fund. Over the next few years, Amelia sent Christmas and birthday cards to the children, each one containing a brief, carefully worded message, a hollow attempt at connection. From these impersonal notes, David learned that Amelia had sold their house and, somewhat predictably, married Jake Miller. But, perhaps less surprisingly, their marriage didn't last. Jake, it turned out, was a serial philanderer. He cheated on Amelia, almost inevitably. Out of a morbid curiosity, David did some online digging and discovered that the woman Jake had become involved with was also married. And her husband, unlike David, did not react with quiet resignation. He reacted with violent rage. In a fit of jealous fury, he attacked Jake, leaving him hospitalized, bedridden for months. The enraged husband, David discovered, was now serving time in prison for aggravated assault. David wasn't surprised. He had always suspected deep down that cheaters rarely, if ever, truly changed. Amelia had made countless promises to visit the children in Rome, to rebuild some semblance of a relationship. But time and time again, she failed to show up. By that point, David had grown accustomed to her unreliability, and the children, sadly, had quickly learned not to take her words seriously. To them, her promises had become meaningless, empty air. Over time, her postcards, her letters, became less frequent than sporadic, and after 4 years of strained, intermittent silence, they stopped altogether. Meanwhile, David's life, unexpectedly, wonderfully, changed again. He met Lily, a beautiful, intelligent, and deeply kind woman. Less than a year into their relationship, David, completely smitten, proposed. "Are you sure you want this, David?" Lily asked, her voice tinged with a hint of doubt. You know I can't have children. That's why my first husband left me." David didn't hesitate, not for a single second. "Your first husband was an idiot," he said firmly, taking her hands in his. "Lily, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Lily's face softened, a warm, radiant smile spreading across her features. "I love you too, David," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I want to be with you. But what about your children? Will they accept me as part of the family?" "Let's find out together," David said confidently, his eyes shining with love. The next day, David and Lily gathered Ryan and Emily in the living room of their Rome apartment. "Listen, my children," David began, his voice gentle but firm. "I've fallen in love with Lily, and I've asked her to marry me." He paused, taking a breath. "But before we move forward, I need to know how you feel about this. Do you agree for her to be your stepmother?" "No," Ryan replied bluntly, his directness catching Lily slightly off guard. David looked at his son, surprised. "Why not, Ryan?" he asked, trying to understand. "Dad," Emily added, her voice equally direct, "it's not that we don't want her to be with us. We really like Lily. We don't want a stepmother. We want her to be our mom." Lily, stunned, her eyes widening, asked, You want me to be your mother? But what about your real mom?" Ryan, unwavering, answered, "She abandoned us, Lily, a long time ago. If you're marrying Dad, we want you to be our mom. Can you do that?" Overcome with emotion, tears welling in her eyes, Lily looked at David, then turned back to the children. She knelt down, embracing them both tightly. "Of course," she whispered, her voice trembling. It would be an honor to be your mom." 4 months later, David and Lily were married in a small, intimate ceremony overlooking the Roman Forum. Emily was Lily's bridesmaid. Ryan was David's best man. 2 years later, the newly expanded family took a short trip back to the States. Ryan had been accepted into the prestigious U.S. Air Force Academy, and they were planning to drop him off after a brief stop at David's parents' house in upstate New York, where he wanted to introduce Lily to them. After that, they were scheduled to fly to Los Angeles to meet with David's boss and the company's board of directors. After checking into their hotel in Manhattan, they headed to the elevator. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed through the hotel lobby, cutting through the polite murmur of conversation. "David? David Brown? Is that you?" David froze, his blood running cold, instantly recognizing the voice. Slowly, reluctantly, he turned around, and there she was, Amelia, approaching them. Time, he saw, had been far from kind. She looked older, somehow diminished. Her face was lined, aged beyond her years. Her hair, once vibrant, was now streaked with gray, pulled back in a tight, unflattering bun. She looked fragile, almost unrecognizable compared to the woman he had once known, the woman he had once loved. Amelia, hearing her name spoken, the familiar timbre of his voice catching her off guard, turned sharply, trying to steady her breathing. Yes, that's me," she replied, her voice wavering, uncertain. Who are these people? Are you going to introduce us?" Her gaze swept over the group standing beside him, lingering, with a flicker of something unreadable, on Lily, then on the two teenagers standing protectively close to David. "You really don't recognize your own children, Amelia?" David's voice was sharp, edged with a bitterness he hadn't realized he still carried. "The ones you've ignored all this time? Not even trying to speak with them?" His words hung in the air, heavy with accusation. Amelia's eyes widened, stunned, her face paling. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice barely holding together. "Ryan? Emily? You've all changed so much." She took a shaky breath, her gaze shifting back to David. You look well, David." Her attention shifted again to Lily. And who is this?" she asked, pointing a trembling finger at the woman standing beside David. A faint, almost imperceptible smirk crossed David's lips. "She's our mom now, Amelia," Ryan declared, his young voice, now tinged with a slight Italian accent, filled with pride. "Her name is Lily," Emily added, her voice equally firm. "And now, she's our mother." Amelia's breath hitched. She instinctively took a step back, as if physically recoiling from the truth, from the reality of what she had just heard. "Your mother?" she repeated, her voice trembling, laced with disbelief. I am your mother," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "No," Ryan replied firmly, his young face set with a resolute expression. "You gave birth to us, Amelia, but you stopped being our mother when you left, just like you stopped being Dad's wife." It was as if she had been physically struck. Her face drained of color, and she seemed about to collapse when an elderly man in a tailored suit rushed over to her, his face etched with concern. Amelia, are you all right?" he asked gently, his voice full of worry. She shook her head, tears suddenly streaming down her cheeks. He carefully guided her to the nearest chair, his worried gaze darting between her and David's family, suspicion clouding his features. "And who are you people?" the man asked sharply, his tone laced with protective hostility. What have you done to her?" "We've done nothing," David responded calmly, his voice even, controlled. "We simply reminded her of what she once had, and so carelessly threw away." The man's frown deepened, his eyes narrowed. "And who are you?" "Harry Murphy," the man introduced himself, extending his hand, though his posture remained stiff, protective, towards Amelia. "I'm her regular client." "Client?" David echoed, surprise, then a slow, dawning realization creeping into his voice. "Oh, I didn't know she'd turned to escorting." "Well," David said, a cold, bitter edge creeping into his voice, "I hope she pleases you in bed. Good luck with that." David turned, taking Lily's hand, guiding her and the children towards the elevators, leaving Amelia sobbing quietly in her chair, Harry Murphy hovering protectively beside her. As they walked away, Lily looked at David, a question etched on her face. "Was she your first wife?" Lily asked softly. "Yes," David confirmed, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "And honestly, Lily, leaving her was the best choice I ever made." Lily smiled warmly, her hand tightening around his. "You absolutely did, David," she said softly, her voice filled with love and unwavering support. "Don't you ever forget that, my love. And that, my friend, is the end of our story for today. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. May the Force be with you.